200 years ago, builders in the American South figured out something most tiny home companies in 2026 still get wrong. They called it the shotgun house and the dogtrot cabin. One of them could quietly wreck your build with mold and zero privacy. The other one could save you real money in cooling costs over the life of the home, or eat a huge chunk of your square footage budget doing basically nothing. Almost nobody selling tiny homes right now can tell you which is which, or why either one can go badly wrong the moment you shrink it down to tiny home size. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which layout actually works for a modern tiny home, which one is a Pinterest trap waiting to make your life miserable, and there's a third option almost nobody talks about that solves both of their problems at once. Stick around for that one. It is near the end, and it is the one I would actually build. Before we get into it, hit subscribe if you are serious about building smart instead of building trendy. I put out a new breakdown like this every week. Real numbers, real code language, no sponsorships, no affiliate links. Let's get into it. A shotgun house is a narrow rectangular home, usually 12 to 14 feet wide, with rooms lined up back to back in a straight row and no hallway connecting them. You walk directly from one room into the next. The name comes from the folk claim that you could fire a shotgun through the front door and the shot would fly clean out the back without touching a wall. That story is almost certainly a myth, but the shape is completely real, and it defined working-class housing across New Orleans, coastal Georgia, and the broader Gulf South for well over a century. Historians trace the design back to Haiti, and before that to West Africa, carried into the port of New Orleans in the early 1800s by free and enslaved Afro-Haitian immigrants. It became the dominant working-class housing style across the South through Reconstruction and deep into the early 1900s because it was cheap to frame, needed very little material, and fit perfectly on the narrow city lots that were being subdivided as southern cities grew. By the late 1800s, entire neighborhoods in New Orleans, Savannah, and smaller Gulf Coast towns were built almost exclusively out of shotgun houses, sometimes packed in tight rows with barely a few feet of side yard between them. Landlords loved the design because you could fit far more housing units per acre than with any wider floor plan, and tenant families loved it because rent stayed low relative to almost anything else available in a growing city. That same density logic is exactly why the shape is coming back now, a century later, on infill lots that would otherwise sit vacant. A dogtrot is a completely different animal. It is two separate cabin rooms connected by a covered, open-air breezeway that runs straight through the middle of the house, under one continuous roofline. The breezeway itself is sometimes called the dogtrot or the possum trot because dogs would lie down in that shaded cross-ventilated corridor to cool off in the summer heat. One side of the house was usually the kitchen and living space. The other side was the bedroom, and the open middle acted as a natural air conditioner generations before electricity ever reached rural homes. Dogtrot construction is traced to 19th century Appalachian settlers who carried the design with them as they expanded into Texas, Arkansas, and the Ozarks. Unlike the shotgun house, which was largely urban and working class, the dogtrot was a rural farmhouse design built by families who had enough land to spread a home out rather than stack it narrow and deep. The genius of the dogtrot was never really about the two rooms. It was about that breezeway acting like a chimney turned on its side. Hot air moving across the property gets funneled through the shaded, narrow gap, speeds up as it passes between the two cabin masses, and pulls warm air out of both rooms through their open windows and doors, a version of the stack and Venturi effect that engineers now model with software, but that Ozark and Texas farmers figured out through generations of trial and error, decades before anyone had a word for fluid dynamics. Here is where it becomes directly relevant to you. Tiny home builders have been rating historic floor plans for years now, because narrow footprints and low material costs are exactly what a tiny home needs to pencil out financially. A shotgun-style, tiny home fits perfectly on narrow urban infill lots, the kind of leftover 12 to 16-foot wide parcels that a growing number of cities are actively rezoning for infill housing in 2026. A dogtrot-style tiny home has become popular in the off-grid and rural tiny home space because that open central breezeway is a genuinely brilliant passive cooling strategy in hot climates. And Honestly, it photographs beautifully for social media. Both layouts also solve a problem that has nothing to do with romance or history, and everything to do with money. A narrow, linear footprint needs fewer linear feet of expensive exterior wall per square foot of interior space than a boxy or L-shaped layout, which lowers your siding, sheathing, and window flashing costs in a build where every material line item matters. That is the real, unglamorous reason both of these shapes keep resurfacing in tiny home catalogs decade after decade. It is not just nostalgia, it is math. But here is the part nobody's selling you the dream is telling you. The reason shotgun houses fell out of mainstream construction was not nostalgia running dry. It was privacy and airflow. When every room connects directly into the next with no hallway, you cannot get from your bedroom to your bathroom without walking through every other room in the house. In a full-size historic shotgun home that was tolerable because families organized their entire daily rhythm around it. In a modern 300 to 500 square foot tiny home, that same layout can mean your bathroom door opens directly into your kitchen, and there's functionally zero acoustic or visual privacy anywhere in the structure. Builders who copy the shotgun layout without adapting are also walking straight into a cross-ventilation problem. The historic version worked because it had windows and often transom vents above interior doors on both ends of the house, creating a straight, unbroken airflow path from the front door to the back door. A lot of modern shotgun-style tiny homes skip that transom detailing entirely to save on framing cost, which means they lose the one design feature that made the original layout livable in southern heat to begin with. The result is a build with every privacy problem of an open floor plan, and none of the airflow benefit that historically justified having one. There is a second, quieter issue that shows up specifically in modern shotgun-style builds sitting on piers, which is extremely common for tiny homes. When cross-ventilation fails, whether from skipped transoms, added interior walls, or poor window placement, humid air stops moving through the structure the way it is supposed to, and moisture starts working its way into the subfloor cavity from below. Modern shotgun tiny homes built on piers need a properly sealed subfloor and a continuous, higher value vapor barrier to manage that risk. Skip that detail to save a few $100s during framing, and you're signing up for a moisture problem that can take years to show up and thousands of dollars to fix once it does. The Dogtrot has the opposite problem. It wastes space you're paying for. That open central breezeway, the entire reason the design exists, is completely unheated, unconditioned square footage. In a full-size farmhouse sitting on 10 acres, giving up 100 to 150 square feet to a shaded porch corridor costs you nothing you will ever miss. In a tiny home on a trailer or a small urban lot, where you're often paying anywhere from $150 to $400 per square foot, depending on your region and finish level in 2026, that breezeway can represent a meaningful slice of your total build budget, sitting there doing nothing but looking rustic in photos. Here is the correction that matters most, and it is one a lot of builders get backwards. Under most energy codes, that open breezeway is correctly excluded from conditioned square footage, which sounds like a win since it is not adding to your heating and cooling load calculations. But conditioned square footage and zoning footprint are two completely different measurements, and a lot of people confuse them. Municipal zoning departments very often calculate maximum lot coverage, setback compliance, and total allowable footprint based on the entire exterior roofline and foundation footprint of structure, not just the conditioned interior. That means your gorgeous open-air Dogtrot breezeway, even though it is not heated or cooled, can still eat directly into the maximum footprint cap you're trying to build inside of, or trigger setback issues you did not plan for, all without giving you a single extra usable interior square foot in return. You can end up with a home that is smaller on paper for permitting purposes than a fully enclosed structure of the same overall footprint, purely because of how that breezeway gets counted by your local zoning office. This is not theoretical. Tiny home owners in shotgun-inspired layouts in humid climates are running dehumidifiers nearly non-stop because a long, narrow box with weak or absent cross-ventilation traps moisture inside the structure. Mold remediation in a tiny home in 2026 can run anywhere from around $500 for a minor surface cleaning job, up to well over $5,000 if the problem has already worked its way into subfloor framing or wall cavity insulation. That $5,000 number is not a worst-case scare figure. It is a realistic outcome for exactly the subfloor moisture scenario described a moment ago, the one caused by skipping proper sealing and vapor barrier detail on a pier-mounted shotgun build. Owners of Dogtrot-inspired tiny homes on trailers, meanwhile, are discovering during permitting, sometimes after they have already ordered materials, that their local jurisdiction counts the breezeway toward total footprint or lot coverage limits, even though it will never show up on an energy audit as conditioned space. That can trigger a stricter zoning category than the one they originally budgeted and designed around, forcing a redesign, a repermit, or in some cases a straight-up denial. Here is the honest answer, and it depends entirely on your climate and your lot. If you're on a narrow urban infill lot, in a city that is opening up ADU or infill zoning in 2026, and you're building a humid subtropical or hot climate, a shotgun-inspired layout can absolutely work, but only under two conditions. First, you insist on real transom vents or high clear-story windows connecting every room, restoring the front to back airflow path the original design depended on. Second, you build in at least one interior pocket door or a sliding door somewhere along that straight run, solving the privacy problem the historic design never had to deal with because families back then simply lived differently than a modern couple or single occupant does today. And if you're building on piers, budget for a sealed, continuously vapor-barriered subfloor from day one. It is far cheaper to include in the original framing bid than to retrofit after a mold problem forces your hand. If you're on a rural lot with room to spread out, off-grid, or planning to be in a hot, dry, or hot, humid climate where passive cooling genuinely matters, a scaled-down Dogtrot breezeway can still pencil out. But before you commit to it, call your local building and zoning department and ask, specifically, whether an open-air breezeway counts toward your maximum allowable footprint or lot coverage limit under your zoning code. Get that answer in writing if you can. Then keep that open corridor small, for 6 feet wide rather than a full room's width, and treat it as a covered walkway rather than a full-blown outdoor living room. That keeps the passive cooling benefit largely intact without eating your square footage budget alive, and it minimizes how much footprint you are handing over to unconditioned space in the first place. But there's a third option that most tiny home content creators never mention, because it does not have a catchy folk name, and it does not photograph as dramatically as a wide, open rustic breezeway. It is called the Shotgun-Dogtrot Hybrid, and a handful of small custom builders in the Gulf South and Texas have quietly been building versions of it since around 2023. Instead of one long, straight run of rooms, or a full open-air breezeway splitting the house cleanly in two, you build a shotgun-style linear layout, but insert a single narrow, fully enclosed transition zone right at the point where you would normally put a Dogtrot breezeway. Think of it as a mini mudroom or utility corridor with real walls, real insulation, and a real conditioned roofline, not an open-air gap. That corridor still gets high vents or a small clear-story window to preserve airflow, but because it is fully enclosed and conditioned, it does not get flagged as non-habitable or unconditioned by code officials, and it does not create the footprint counting problem that trips up pure Dogtrot builds. It also does not create the confusing zero privacy run that trips up pure shotgun builds, because that enclosed transition zone functions as a genuine buffer between the public and private halves of the house, with a door on each end. You get the privacy break that a pure shotgun layout is missing. You get a real version of the airflow benefit that made the Dogtrot famous. And you get a footprint that behaves predictably during permitting, because every square foot of it is enclosed, conditioned, and counted the same way by every code official who looks at it. It is not flashy. It will not get you the aesthetic of a wide, open breezeway with rocking chairs in it. But talk to builders who have actually lived in one of these hybrids versus one of the pure historic replicas, and the hybrid owners are consistently the ones who are not fighting mold, are not fighting privacy complaint from partners or roommates, and are not getting blindsided by their local zoning office halfway through a permit application. A handful of custom shops building this hybrid quietly price it within a few percentage points of a comparable pure shotgun build, because you're trading a strip of open-air breezeway for a small strip of enclosed corridor, not adding an entirely new room. The framing cost difference is minor. The livability difference, according to the people actually sleeping in these homes, is not minor at all. If you're actually planning a build and you want the floor plan math, the vent placement details, and which cities are currently friendliest to narrow infill lots in 2026, that is exactly the kind of thing I break down every week on this channel, with no sponsors and no affiliate links, just real numbers and real code language. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Drop a comment telling me whether you are building Shotgun, Dogtrot, or the Hybrid, and I will see you in the next video.